My name is Vic Massaglia. I'm the director of the Career and Professional Development Center for the School of Public Health. Welcome back. I hope you had a great third session, and welcome to our last session here, where we are going to have an in-depth conversation here. Our panelists today is Carolyn Porta from the School of Nursing, Megan Voorhees, right? What? Voorhees, that's what I said, but okay. From the Institute of the Environment, and Virajita Singh, I have to say where you're from the Office of Equity and Diversity. Thank you so much for being our panelists today. They'll have 10 minutes-ish to talk, okay? Rachel in the front is the bad person. She's the timer. She's actually a really good person. She's a really good timer, that is. Okay. But let's welcome our first speaker.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm sure I was told I had at least 25 minutes, but I'm kidding. Yeah. So let's jump in. My hope is to give you a case study, an example of what we're doing with some of the data and the creativity we're using to collect data to answer questions that seem meaningful to us with respect to sexual assault on college campuses. A little bit about me. You should know that I am a faculty here in nursing and public health. I want to use the right tool to do the job, so I'm very pragmatic in that regard when it comes to research and to data. I have been a forensic nurse for over 20 years, a sexual assault nurse examiner, which means I do take call shifts and I do still respond and do exams on sexual assault victims for Regions Hospital and 4 others on the east side of the Twin Cities. Let's remind ourselves when we're talking about prevention science that it is not easy. We're trying to do really amazing things. We're trying to stop something from happening and then trying to demonstrate that we're the ones that helped make that thing not happen. It is challenging, but it's also really critical, important work when we look at young people here at the University of Minnesota, when we look at their trajectories into adulthood. Well, we know we can't solve everything, but let's have some fun talking about what we think we might be able to do, okay? Reality check. When we think about sexual assault, what story are the data telling us right now? And really, we don't even know the true story because a lot of our data sources aren't talking to each other. And we've spent the day, it seems, already talking about those challenges. And so hopefully at some point, we can generate some solutions around how we take the diverse data that do exist, police data, advocacy data, I can go on, and actually come up with a story of, are things getting better? If they're not, why aren't they? If we're trying new things like more online training modules for faculty and staff, is that having an impact at the level of student, faculty, staff interactions? We don't know yet, but we're trying new things because we know we have a problem. And then just personally ask yourself, are you pragmatic when it comes to data? Are you interested in go-along interviews, or you stick to the more traditional ways that you've always done it because that's comfortable and defendable? Let's hope that we can have discussions about creative data sources and then work as a group to be able to defend those, because we can. A little bit about the Collaboratory that's been driving some of the work that we've been doing. The Collaboratory received an award from University of Minnesota, Minnesota Futures, to put together a multidisciplinary, multi-agency sort of group committed to looking at sexual assault on campuses. And you can see from this group that we're diverse. We hadn't worked before together. So we have folks from mapping. We have folks from women's studies. We have a community partner who had developed a bystander intervention that hadn't yet been tested, for example. This group of people is represented behind me and some of these ideas that I'm sharing today. There's a real team that has been working for almost the last 2 years now, trying to figure out how to get the data to tell this story. And then when we find a program that we think works, how can we demonstrate that it really works? We have community partners who do amazing work, and they don't always have that rigorous testing alongside what they're doing to be able to scale it up. So with respect to sexual assault and sexual violence, I will just remind us that things like the Me Too movement, These aren't actually new. Me Too started quite a few years ago, but they remind us of what's happening in society and of course has dramatic impact here on campus. We're more aware and more vocal of what's been done to ourselves and to others. We are less tolerant of what has been done. We want solutions, and we are willing to talk about it quite openly. University of Minnesota has challenges, and we have people on campus really committed to trying to address those challenges. So we have data everywhere, on campus and nationally. We have the College Student Health Survey, self-report data. We have assault data. We have police data where we can map out where assaults and incidents have occurred. We have focus groups where we try to understand what's going on with that party scene and that party culture. We've done interviews with college students where we walk around with them on campus and we say, where do you feel safe? Where don't you feel safe? You can take pictures and map those locations. Really interesting opportunities to understand the problem, but then also try to understand the solution. But the example I'm going to give you of ecological momentary assessment, we took that on because we felt we were missing some of that in-the-moment, day-to-day contextualized data from students. And I think as you listen to this, you might see that it's a tool that could be used in some of the work you're doing. We tested this real-time momentary collection with students at College of St. Scholastica because they had partnered with us in Duluth to test a model up there. And we did it this fall now at University of Minnesota. Ecological momentary assessment is a real-time assessment method used to capture behavior and/or psychological moods, feelings as they're experienced in that moment. So in your own work, whether you work with chronic disease, whether you work with a social problem, think about how you might benefit from getting information right now if you are able to ask that population a question or a series of questions. So don't just think about it, I want you to actually test it out. If you have your phone with you, I know you're shocked, I'm inviting you to take it out, and I'm inviting you to go to your respective app store and to download the Expometrics app. You know how fast you can download an app. Most of you do this, anytime in meetings when you're, not fully paying attention. Create a really quick account. It requires an email address, a password. And then you'll get an opportunity to put in an experience code. I just did this walking in from the ramp. And then you'll have a survey that has about 5 questions tailored to this audience just for the fun of it. It is not research. I don't have IRB approval. It is piloting an app for the fun of it to demonstrate to you how easy this is. It's easy for college students, it's easy for us, and you get amazing data. By the end of our talk, probably by the end of the panel, I will pull up the website and we will be able to see our actual results for any of you that do this survey. Okay? So very briefly, what we did with, again, the experience is fall 2018, and it's the Expometrics app. That's what you need to know as I keep going. So at College of St. Scholastica, we wanted to look at the students' day-to-day living and their partying, and we had 76 students respond out of 180 students who were in our actual program. We sent out 5 surveys per week, so like a Thursday night, a Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night. Each survey had a few different questions, and we did this over the weekends of 6 weekends between February and March of last spring. You can see a couple of the screenshots from the app that some of you are starting to download and think about using. Did you consume alcohol at any of these parties? This is an example of a question. They could just click yes or no. We gave closed-ended options. We gave open-ended options. And in the sample survey that you're doing, it actually offers you the chance to take a picture and upload it. So you can actually get a location and get a visual. Here's an example of some of our results. Are you at a party right now? And you can see Thursday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night. And we can see, of course, we would expect more people to say, yes, I've been at a party on Saturday night than on Saturday morning. How sober are you right now? And the options, you can see the blue, which is sort of fun. I am very not sober. The orange, I am not sober. The gray, I'm not really sure. And yes, yellow, I feel sober. You can see that I'm getting some very interesting, real in-the-moment data. And yeah, you could say, what? How can they answer that if they're intoxicated? All of that. You'd be surprised. How many counts of intoxicated sex occurred? We were looking at partying as it relates to sexual violence. 113 of our texted responses at the time, there was no sex in the window of time that we asked, the last few days. And then there were 26 that said, yes, we had sex, but there was no drinking. And there were 5 that said we had sex, self or partner was drunk. That's interesting. To me, that's interesting. It can complement what we ask once every couple years on the College Student Health Survey, for example. When you look back at the last year, what were you doing? Here's a very brief example, 3 more slides or so. Very brief example of U of M results. We are only in the midst of it right now this fall, but we were asking what folks were doing. What are you doing right now? And you can see the open-ended responses, waiting for my chicken tenders, taking genetics notes from my book. You can also see on the right that we had lat long. So you can see that now we can map them. And now we have an opportunity to overlay police crime data from the campus. We have an opportunity to overlay where the bars are. We have an opportunity to overlay where they say the apartments are, where they party. We can start to get some interesting pictures of contextualized, individualized data, but also clustered data of subgroups of students. How do our international students look as compared to some of our other Greek life-involved students or athletic group students? Here's an example of adolescent data, just to give you an example of one student who over the course of, you can see how many days, provided mood data. And these mood data give me a story. How often was she reporting being very happy, very sad, very mad? Or was she pretty stable, status quo? I can paint a really rich picture for one person versus, again, a group of people. And I am going to stop right there and just say that I think this is an example of something that's super interesting, relevant to students. They can easily do this wherever they are. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it could be a source of data that tells a piece of the story we haven't had up until now. Thank you. I think I'll do our results maybe after the complete panel because maybe more people. Expometrics, fall 2018. And you can do a few, then we'll have more data.
So do I put it in right here? Is that what I put it in?
Yes, so fall 2018, and then you'll be able to start your survey.
Okay, very good, very good. Priorities, hold on a second. Okay.
Just keep that up.
That's Samantha. She would not be happy with me putting that here. For those folks online, what I'm doing is changing out the PowerPoints. Okay. Feel free to come up with a question in the meantime. Do you have any questions for Carolyn? We are having a technical difficulty. Oh, I know. Got it. All right. So no questions, you just make me look really embarrassed, right?
Or maybe it's after a long day of conferencing, everyone just needs a moment.
In that great lunch, right? There we go. Thank you, Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan Voorhees. I'm the co-director of a small program here at the university called ACARA. And I was actually asked to talk about a project that I was involved in at another campus. I know. But it's one that I would love to help make happen here in some way or another and using data. So I just have a story for you. So just to give you a little context about what I do here, for the last 2 years, I've been the co-director of this program called ACARA. And we're a program that helps students design solutions to social and environmental problems. And then if they come up with ideas that we think are a good idea, or we just really believe in the students, we can give them funding to help them make that happen. So we're truly interdisciplinary in the work that we do. So all of our courses are co-taught by faculty from across the university. And we get students, it's a data conference, so I thought I should have bar graphs. So this is the only data you're gonna get from me today. So there's some data about how many undergraduates and graduate students we have. I think there might be a few students in the room, and there's info about our program outside if you wanna learn more about our work. But the project, well, I'll actually tell you, when I came to ACARA from the University of California, Berkeley in the Bay Area, that's where all the smoke is right now, and one of my colleagues from Berkeley is in the back of the room. We're taking over, you all. The Californians are fleeing the fires and coming to Minnesota. There's actually many of us on campus that we're at UC Berkeley, so we are invading. I think it's a good thing. But when I came to ACARA, I was really concerned to see that so many of my students tended to be the more privileged students because they can take part in our kinds of programs, right? They can say, yes, give me $5,000 to go do my project and it'll help pay for expenses, but it's totally fine that you're not giving me any money to help pay for my own labor in that project, right? So I was really concerned about that, and partly because of some experiences, and this is actually about our thing. The experience that I had at University of California, Berkeley. In 2000, I was hired as the director of the Public Service Center there and the assistant dean of students. And it was a center, the Public Service Center, it's sort of a combination of a number of different programs that we have here at the U, but supported students in getting involved in the community through volunteer projects, through community-based or participatory action research, through internships, et cetera. It was a center that over the time I was there went from working with about 400 students to 5,000. So it's a large center now. And after a couple of years of being there, I kept realizing it's like, wow, it's my underrepresented students. It's my low-income students. It's my students of color who tend to actually be leading our projects, volunteering to do 10, 15, 20, 30 hours of work, maybe more, to do that experience. And because they wanted to give back to the communities that they were from, right? They wanted to contribute and be involved in those communities. And what I also started to find as I got to know students more is they were the students who weren't making it to class. And then I had that student who dropped out because it's like, well, my work is so important, my volunteer work through the service center, I'm not going to class anyway, so I'm going to drop out. And I'm like, okay, we're doing something wrong. Ended up meeting with a number of colleagues on campus who also had students involved in some kind of outreach program, right? Tutoring programs, mentoring programs, those kinds of things. Some of them paid, some of them unpaid. And I said, well, let's see if we can actually collect all the data of students that are involved in our programs and see what we can learn about them. And my theory was that we probably had a preponderance of low-income students that were doing more of the hours, that were really leading the projects or some way or another. So over 3 years, we collected a lot of data on our students. I mean, actually fairly simple, right? We were able to get most of it through the university's data system, and in partnering with financial aid, we wanted to look at how many students were Pell Grant recipients, right? And what we found is of our students that were doing 10 hours or more a week, 31% were Pell Grant recipients. Right? And so we were able to use that information, and this is the Bay Area, so there's might be a different scale here, to raise a $9 million endowment that funds 100 students every year. They get $5,000 a year so that they don't have to work, because not every student can afford to volunteer, right? And really focus on leading other students and leading their peers and doing incredible work in the community. So these are all folks that make me teary. I still miss them. But this is the kind of project that I think we could use diversity data here at the university. I'm just going to pitch. We can link it to our campaign. Like, what if those of us who are doing these kinds of programs in some way or another, or even through service learning courses or other ways, field studies projects, those kinds of things, we all know that there's the students that can't afford to volunteer that should be not only participating, but rewarded for leading in these kinds of programs. So that's my story for you today. A good Friday afternoon before Thanksgiving dream that I would love to work with you all on. And with that, I'll turn it over to Virajita.
Welcome, Virajita.
Thank you. Thank you all who are still here since the morning.
You saw me walking away, right?
Yeah,
I really think the Wonder Woman photo is perfect.
for everything, yeah.
Okay.
So how many of you have heard of College Made? Okay, so a few of you. I think I introduced myself in the morning, but just in case you've just come in the afternoon, I'm Virajita Singh. I'm Assistant Vice Provost in the Office for Equity and Diversity. I'm also a faculty member and researcher in the College of Design. And this project is a project that will now be in its second cycle, although there's some history to it, that is about our work, OED's work with academic units. So I'll start with the definition of diversity, and I'm sorry that the fonts are small, the font is small, so I'll read parts of it and the slides will be available later. The scope of diversity at the University of Minnesota is really broad. We talk about supporting individuals and groups who are American Indians and other indigenous populations, people of color, including historically underrepresented groups and new immigrant populations, people with both apparent and non-apparent disabilities, people who identify as women, people of various gender and sexual identities and expressions, first-generation students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. And then we say we also address issues of access and climate for individuals who might encounter barriers based on their religious expression, age, national origin, ethnicity, or veteran status. Furthermore, we recognize the importance of working with people who claim more than one or of the above identities. So this is mainly to remind us that our definition is really broad, and so then when we start to ask questions about data, we have to remember that the data needs to be data set needs to be broad as well. And I think we're not there yet in terms of what data is available and collected. The next thing that may be relevant is sort of the Office for Equity and Diversity's vision sort of institutionally. There's three areas in terms of priorities. One is increasing representational diversity. And when we talk about increasing, we're not saying there are any set numbers or quotas in terms of our populations. It's broad. We are talking about increasing it. And then the second thing, of course, is it's also about improving campus climate, because it's not just about bringing differences to the table and including people, but are the people who are here then with all those differences able to thrive. So that's about climate. And the third thing is leveraging strategic partnerships and initiatives. And what this means is that we can't do it alone. A few staff in OED can't advance equity and diversity for the whole institution. Neither can a college or a unit. We have to do it together and in partnership. So that's what that is about. In terms of implementation, this Vice President Go has introduced sort of 4 new things that we need to think about. So there's the issue about how are we doing institutionally in terms of our diversity. The second is what does it mean for our interactions, and experts like Nancy Cantor and others have taken on that issue in terms of diversity nationally about what interactional diversity means. Then there is intercultural competence. We heard earlier in some sessions about IDI, but there's many different ways at getting at intercultural competence. In fact, even within the field, I understand there's about 300 tools, of which 30 are somewhat well respected. So there's lots out there. And then finally, there is the idea of indigenous relations, and I think we can all agree, from land acknowledgement to other things, we have a long ways to go in terms of improving our indigenous relations and actual actions and sustained and consistent actions over time. So those things are relevant. So what is College Made? CollegeMate is an initiative that engages colleges to envision and declare and attain their own mission-driven equity and diversity goals. And they connect to these institutional priorities of representational diversity, campus climate, and strategic partnerships and initiatives. It's based in the college. It's meant to be a college initiative with college ownership and accountability, but it's a partnership in which we, OED, and other partners work with colleges. So when and where does this happen? It's an annual cycle, and I think the seeds of this started in 2014 with my predecessor, Donika Scott, visiting some selected colleges and starting those conversations. In 2016-17, we went through 16 of the 17 colleges conducting this process, and now we have started the second cycle. I think the 17th college was in a dean transition, so that didn't happen. How it happens is there's meetings held in each college. There's a pre-meeting, and this sounds so higher ed, isn't it? A pre-meeting, a meeting, and a post-meeting, you know? But it is about preparing, thinking about who needs to be at the meeting and what data content will we talk about. Then there's the actual hour-and-a-half meeting, and then there's this time I've also instituted a post-meeting because we can all be busy and retreat to our rest of our work. So it's a way of keeping going. There's sometimes been custom meetings. So let's say we meet with the leadership, but then in colleges like CLA, where there's many departments and centers, there's a follow-up meeting held to share the same data with that group or with a diversity committee and so on. Who's involved? The 17 colleges on Twin Cities campus, the college leadership, and certainly whoever they bring to the table. Oftentimes, each college defines who that is, but it might be the HR director, in some cases, in most cases, associate deans. Sometimes students' leadership is involved as well. From the institutional side, OED Central, OHR representatives, Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action, and this year the Office of Undergraduate Education will also be involved in those colleges that have undergraduate students. And then our data gathering is also a partnership. We have Office of Institutional Research working with us to give data, our Disability Resources Center, Equal Opportunity Office, our office, and then of course things that the college bring. What data sets do we use? So for representational diversity, we use the student data. In this cycle, we're using fall 2013 and fall 2017 as just the comparison to see what the trends are. We also use faculty data again around the same time frames, but we look at race, ethnicity, and gender, and then also different categories of faculty, and also some faculty availability data that's from University of Chicago data set that Equal Opportunity has access to. And then finally, staff data is also race, ethnicity, and gender. And students registered with the Disability Resources Center, as well as campus employees with disabilities and protected veteran status employees. So this is a snapshot. The numbers are hard to read, but it gives a visual sense. On the left, you will see American Indian students. This is the student data set for all the university, Twin Cities. And so American Indian students, Asian students, followed by Black students and Hispanic students. Then there's the total of students of color in maroon, and then international students, and then the white student population. So it gives a snapshot of what our trends are, and we look at it over 2 years, the 2013, 2016. Now the same kind of data is then looked at the college level. So we're always looking at institutional trends and then the college trends. We do the same with gender, and so I think it's female is in maroon and male is in gold. And then there is an unknown category. Unfortunately, it hasn't been identified, and that sort of connects back to the morning conversations about how that data is collected and separated. Then we do the same with faculty, also gender, and you can start to see here that maybe I should have mentioned both in terms of demographics with students and faculty and staff, that our numbers of American Indian population and Hispanic and Black are very, very small. Asian are a little higher. And then, of course, international, when you go back to the students, are much stronger. So I think those things become clear. I see I'm running up on time, but this year we've expanded in collaboration with EOAA to include disability and veteran status data for the university. And it seems like we are not meeting our goals for faculty and staff numbers that we hope to of accommodating or in, hiring people with disabilities, and nor are we meeting our goals for veterans. So that's something that we should keep in mind as we advance this work. We also, for campus climate, we use student SERO and grad SERO data, and then we also use employee engagement survey data. And then sometimes colleges have some climate data. I'll give an example of the College of Pharmacy that has done conversations about college climate with their students and faculty. They've had a survey, and they've also had listening sessions, so that can be also brought. These are some examples of we take from the SERO and the grad SERO. And just looking at the SERO data, you'll see what's important to note here is that while generally we are doing well, the first one is students of my race, ethnicity are respected on this campus. You can see a distinct difference between the students of color bar and the international student bar and white students. So that basically says that even though we think we're delivering the same thing, it's being received differently by students in these three categories, and that's something we have to keep in mind. That gap sort of shifts based on different questions. This is graduate level, but again, there are nuances there. And finally, for strategic partnerships, right now we're collecting data about Office of OED's programs and awards that the college may have received, certificate training, maybe participation in things like the diversity community of practice, but also EOA workshops and any complaints that the college has received and policy violations. And then we also ask the college for their information about partnerships within the college or the community. Finally, we asked the college to set a goal, one or two goals in each of these areas, and this year we are planning to make them public on the OED website so we can all have a shared understanding of what each college is committing to. So in conclusion, I think what's working with this is that it's a data-driven analysis. We're using that to have a conversation. Those conversations are robust. People are interested, bringing different perspectives, and I have not seen any resistance to this in this, the full cycle I have been through. People are interested in doing this and moving it forward. Quantitative and qualitative. Certainly, we are biased towards quantitative data, so we need to do more with qualitative. There's a two-way connection. We approach it as a partnership, and there's a two-way connection from institution to college. And relationship building is really what happens through this. And then the next step is that it strikes me as that since we're an academic institution, if we don't connect to the academic and curricular, like what's happening, like example, like what Dan was talking about, his work with students, we should be connecting to the dots with that as well, not just the operational side. And we need to continue to expand data on more diversity categories. And our goal is to then broaden this kind of work to units beyond colleges, to have specific units. And we've had units express interests, and then also expand it to the system so that we're looking at system level data as well. So I think with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Let's see if we have any data or if it's a complete flop. In the browser.
Don't we have it over here?
Yeah, we have it open.
Which one just hit?
A different, it was a
is it Google
browser
Drive?
that has just, yeah. Okay, so I'm not endorsing Expometrics all that much. It's a very affordable app for real-time data collection, but there are others out there that are great and more expensive. But I did want to show you the screen when I log in as an administrator. It's there, but it's not, you know what, we have to move it over here. Nope.
Maybe that one? There you go. Beautiful.
Boy,
got it.
okay.
Got it.
So here's the survey that we did. And then, what? Okay, no, I have to refresh. I'll be so offended. Okay. So for those of you online, what I did is I pulled up the Expometrics login on the web. I logged in, and I can see the survey that I administered, and I have 20 responses to my survey. And then what will happen is I can simply click on that, and for those of you that speak the language of Excel or your variety of different apps, I can download a CSV file application, so you can put it into Excel or R or whatever is your favorite software package to do some quantitative exploring, and then qualitatively we can look at our open-ended, and we can also do that visual analysis with visuals. So I might show the view trend. Yeah, that doesn't really give us a whole lot, but when I download the CSV file, as you know, it's not rocket science, but it will show you some of your results. And again, just showing you how quickly we can have data available. When the College Student Health Survey goes out once a year, Katie Lust at Boynton Health, Director of Research, spends a lot of time compiling her results. And this is a fun opportunity where we can end up with data very quickly if we need a snapshot of something that's going on. And I can see that Excel is jumping down here in the you know, row, the menu thing.
It's really excited about that data.
Yeah. But it would be fun to show you because then, well, it's a spreadsheet. But you want to see how the photos came in, perhaps. Maybe that's why Excel is freaking out.
Sure.
It might be. But in any case, it's there, and what I can do happily is email to people as well the examples in the sample. But I really didn't want it to be a... Okay, I will. You know I don't have this in front of me. You know that
So let's go.
Here, I'm being challenged here.
Yeah, it's probably opening behind the scenes.
You think so?
Yeah, because it's
In any case, it's fun, and I'm not trying to advocate that we do away with the traditional data that we're using, but that we just think about these augmenting opportunities that are available to us. I think it's criminal, frankly, not to use the technology and the tools we have that students and frankly faculty are so comfortable with, and to continue just doing traditional things because that's the way we've always done it. There's no reason.
Carolyn, how about we keep it up there?
Okay.
We have Q&A and hopefully it'll finish.
That sounds great, and I'll just keep messing with it.
So we're going to have it keep downloading while we have the panel discussion, and then hopefully the files would have downloaded by then.
Yeah, let's try.
Okay. So welcome our panelists to the really comfy chairs. You see it?
Except for me. Yeah, I've got
Oh yeah, so it's
something here, but you know, I zipped
Y'all are
it.
just gonna be waiting to see who took what pictures.
No, I'll step
Can we
away.
open that first?
Wow, these are low.
Is this the download?
That should just
That's what it's.
I don't know what that is, but whoopsie. The heck. Okay.
So Vic, I have a question.
There we go.
Great.
What's come through loud and clear today has just been the amazing work around campus. And so how do we find each other? How do we begin to say, Carolyn's got this fabulous method that we should be thinking about. Somebody else is doing visualization. Somebody else wants to make sure that our volunteers are well paid. How do we begin to support and find one another? And I'm going to turn this to Virajita. Can you hear me now? Thank you, Teddy, to give me one of the challenging questions. You know, I think really this today has been very exciting. I think we have a community of people who are committed to this work.
Yet we're big enough that we don't know who we all are. And it's about finding it. And some of that is related to serendipity. It's not linear, the process of finding each other. And somebody said, was it in the last group, about social networks, and how they have they make a difference. And I have found myself, the diversity community of practice, one of those. It seems to have attracted people who are interested in this work. And we have our committees within it where people are passionately working on things. In fact, today would not have happened without the assessment committee and then the programming committee stepping in and other diversity community of members supporting it. So I think there's something in that process, and we're mobilizing outside our silos. We're in different units. We're also in different positions, so it's not about the silos and the hierarchies. I mean, my sense is that this work will advance when we break out of old ways of thinking and move into new ways of thinking, and the new ways are networked. They're not about being in your box, whether it's your silo or your hierarchy, and really networking and doing the work together and figuring it out as you go. Because if the old models had been working for us, we would be where we wanted to be, but we are not. And so it's about forging new ways, and that's not going to be happening by us, I think, waiting for somebody to tell us. We have to figure it out through co-creating it and test it in a way which I think some of us are trying to do here. So that's my answer to it. It's not a fixed sense of where we will be, but continuing to do what we're trying to do. Carolyn.
Oh, other questions? Way in the back.
I kind of have an unpopular question, but how do you balance innovation and student data with best practices and data privacy and our responsibility to students? So when we use these innovative apps, where's that data going? Who's storing that data? And I also think about it in how institutions are starting to use predictive analytics, which somebody talked about earlier today, to predict success of students, and then that's a slippery slope of putting students in a box. So I just in general wanted to hear your thoughts about how do you balance that innovation with our responsibility to student data and ethics.
Okay. I think that's a really good point, because we can be blindsided by the desire to create something new, but we have these tools with extreme power now, which we don't even know the impacts for. And so if they're not used carefully, and if there's ill intention, as we're hearing, I mean, isn't that in the news right now with Facebook and other things about how data was manipulated, or, things were pursued that they shouldn't have. So I think what you're pointing to is the need for a strong ethical and moral considerations. And this book, and I'm sorry I don't remember the author offhand, but it's Weapons of Math Destruction, MATH, where she's talking about the dark side of data and realizing as a data analyst the impact it can have on masses of people. And so I think we can't be naive. So that's a really good point. Sometimes I think it's easy to think about all the good things you're creating with data, but there is always also a dark side. So maybe having some checks to see that you're not crossing the line into that.
I think an augmentation in my response, 2 points. One would be that I feel very strongly we don't ask questions or do surveys that we're really not going to use. And I think that it's not directly answering your question, but there are a lot of times where a small group of people will decide all of these questions are interesting to know, but they ask the questions, they get the data, and then they're not actually driving policy or driving change. They're sitting in an Excel file somewhere. So really being purposeful in what we're asking and why we're asking it, and that's true for any data tool or data collection tool that we're using. And then my second point would be simply that in the work that I do, and I know a lot of our other colleagues do, we actively engage those who are being surveyed or data are being collected about, and we engage them in the process of how we disseminate what we're finding. And my example would be focus groups with Greek life involved students, asking about party culture, asking about responsibility, asking about consent processes and substance use. It would have been extremely disrespectful not to engage them in the process of what we end up putting out in a press release, putting out in a publication, putting out in anything internal for the university to use. And I think on the health side, I'll add just a final point as an example. Katie Lust, the director of research at Boynton, does a really good job of making very good use of all of the data that she collects from students on the College Student Health Survey. And those are thousands and thousands of student responses. She creates a very poignant picture. Tuesday, the press release will go out, so some of the data are embargoed right now, but it's the first year that she's asked questions about sexual harassment, and I can tell you right now that there is a fair percentage of students who said they have experienced sexual harassment by a faculty member. So we will have data that are extremely sober. We have to be really diligent to act on those data and not ignore them as well.
I just wanted to say it's tempting to think that the abuse of data is a new issue. It's always been abused by some people and twisted by some people who want particular answers that drive their own methods. So we're, I think, at a point where we can say, this does happen, and so we can put in safeguards, ethical standards, et cetera, similar to the IRB, but that we have to even amp it up. So Megan, how can we help you build your lovely vision? Yeah.
Can I take us back for a minute quickly? Because I think her question was specifically about data privacy. So the apps that we're using, like the app we just downloaded to answer the questions, how are we making sure that someone can't hack into the systems that we're using to use that data in other ways?
Sure. So thank you for making sure we circle back on that. With respect to data privacy, I would say that we have to do due diligence, and there's two possibilities. One is we build the system in-house, which is what we did a couple years ago. The AHC-IS team developed the app that we used, and we still had to use a cloud-based system to send out our survey question to a texted phone number and get a response back. The second option, which is more popular nowadays, is to work with an entity, a private sector app, and just determine how they're going to collect an identifier and how you're going to ensure the protection of those who choose to respond. In this case, we're trusting that Expometrics has safeguards in place, and in the system with the college students, we have gone through a review with the IRB to ensure that, to the best that we can with cloud security and cloud-based systems, we have an assurance that there's some data privacy there. But we can't guarantee that someone out there in the world can't hack that, and we have to be honest about that. So there's also another piece of it where you just kind of say, well, this data might not be private, so then what identifier are we using? A phone number that can change in 2 minutes, or someone's social security number that never changes? So we use phone numbers, and then we switch those out with participant ID numbers as quickly as we can, but there's still a risk. And anyone who says there is no risk with cloud-based or app-based research is a fool.
Does anyone want to circle back on that question? Also embedded in the last question was a question about how are we all ethical leaders, and how do we take into consideration ethics, and wanted to share that this summer, so here at the university, some of you may be part of it, there's a network of folks who work on student leadership programs in some way or another. It's a new network. And this summer we agreed that we would all sort of look at a long list of competencies that tend to be good ones to teach students, right? And that we would self-assess not a real good study. So the real faculty in the room just self-assess, which competencies do you think you're teaching to your students? And I was actually frightened to find that very few programs even identified teaching ethics at all. So I think part of what we need to do to deal with ethics in general is make sure that all of us who are working with students or teaching in any way, whether it's colleagues or professional development, are making sure that we're embedding ethical considerations and teaching throughout our programs and throughout our courses. So I just thought I'd identify that, if especially around data, right? Like if we're gonna train the folks to be the next Facebook leaders, let's do that work well.
So I do want you to say,
Yeah.
how can we help you build your dream?
The question is, how can
Well, does
we
anyone-
help you build your dream?
Does anyone have $9 million? I think there's a number of different ways to go about that, but I think if there's folks in the room or you know people who are working with the kinds of students that I'm talking about, or you're working with programs that are getting there could be a number of different ways that we could put this work together, right? For me, the piece that's really where my expertise is about helping students get off campus and engage in the community in one way or another, whether that's locally or globally. But I think there's a lot of different ways. We have students on campus that are active student leaders that probably shouldn't be volunteering in those leadership roles. So I think there's a number of different ways to do that, but I think we need to find each other, so it's partly why I agreed to be here today, and start to figure out what data we want to collect and how we might do that in really ethical, private, smart ways, and see what case we can put together. I will say at Berkeley, part of why we were successful is we were able to make a case that alumni or our donors would be really interested in supporting financial aid scholarships. So we weren't competition with financial aid. We were bringing in money to help financial aid do what they wanted to do, but that it would go to students who were taking on these other experiences. So it was sort of a win-win across the university. So I think there's ways to do that. Amelia, you had a question?
Thank you. This is a question for Virajita related to the MADE process, which I participated in once for CLA last year or 2 years ago.
Right.
And I don't think this is part of the process, but would it be possible to, in addition to the other things looked at, that within the college, that there's conversation about representational diversity among the leadership, meaning from the dean to whatever you decide are the leaders within an organization? Because I think across the institution, that's an issue. The people who lead the institution, whether that's directors to the top, don't look like the population of the institution, and I don't know where that conversation happens, and that might be a perfect place to at least have that conversation about who's in your leadership positions within your college or eventually your administrative units when it gets to there. So I'll suggest that.
That's a really great suggestion. Those discussions haven't happened so far, and I would say that applies to the university leadership as well. I know VP Go is the only person of color on the senior leadership cabinet. So that's something we have to keep thinking of. And to me, it reminds me of this notion that it's not just about representation, visually. We're talking about just bringing different perspectives and lived experiences into the decision making, into the understanding of these issues in a nuanced way and sort of shifting things for the future. So that's a great reminder. Thank you.
We have time for probably one more question.
I think for me, it's actually interesting, having gone through part of the day, listening about data, what I want to know, and which could help fund your $9 million project, is how can data increase institutional commitment? Because in the end, it's like this institutional habit. Or there is a problem, we want to learn about this problem, and then there are students exiting, there are staff and faculty exiting, right? And for me, it's imperative that we really start actually going to the heart of the problem, is how our resources how are we sharing resources? If we truly are committed to equity and diversity work, which actually we keep on saying we are, and our mission statements keep on reiterating, but I really want to know how data can drive this to become a real commitment where we are taking action. We are no longer, just studying the problem.
Do you want to say something? Or should I start? Okay. That's another great question and comment. I personally think in my work, I really appreciate that it has these two levels of working. One is like the college made, which works within with leadership and the processes and some decision making. But the other side of it is with the diversity community of practice and doing things like this that is very grassroots, that's not waiting for 10 people to agree before a sentence can be written, for example, or something like that. That decisions can be made and we can move forward and in ways that we need and can see needs to happen. So I think the answer in my mind is, again, trusting individuals also to align with this effort and commitment, and not just waiting for the institution to come at it. Because I would say as an institution, it's always going to lag because it has the inertia of being a large system, slow moving. So I think it has to be on some level disruptive as well. So you need to both to happen. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think working in every way you can from all sides is in my mind.
Would you tell people how they can become members of the DCOP or how they?
Oh, sure. Teddy is asking if I could say something about becoming members of DCOP, and that's the Diversity Community of Practice. And the main thing we ask of the members is that you commit to participating to kind of help shape things, but also bring things back to your unit and bring unit-related things back to the Diversity Community of Practice. So you act as this agent to kind of go back and forth and then actually be part of it and help shape these things that are emerging. So that's all we ask.
So should they contact you if they want to be members?
You can contact me or also Emily, and she and I will discuss, and that could be the first step. Thank you.
Well, let's thank our, were you going to make a comment? Let's thank our panel. Thank you so much. And we do have some data, and just want everybody to know it was an operator error.
Thank you
Okay.
for that. It was, well, this might be. Okay. So we're going to show very briefly to those online, I'm showing the Excel, the Google Sheet of data, and just showing an example. So with respect to identity and data privacy, you'll see that participant ID is a randomly generated number combination of letters and numbers. It is not whatever you put in as your login Gmail. Who thought that Goldie is a chipmunk? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but Goldie's a gopher. So, most people appreciated that, and someone put in chipmunk for fun. You can see that there's location also coded. So in this file here, I don't have the lat long explicitly, but I will be able to, behind the scenes, have that information and be able to then map that many of us who responded were here, and there might be people who are at those offsite locations. And then you can also see how the checkbox system came out and exported with this particular app, and where people said they would go to a warm location if they had this $15,000 to burn, and it's all over the board. But again, just a simple example of being able to get some interesting information in real time, and some of the issues we're dealing with on campus and in society would really benefit from some real-time data and real-time assessing of what's going on, the climate, the environment, yeah. So there's that for now. The photos are somewhere else, and those of you that, if you did upload a photo and you want to email me and we can figure out how to work with that, I'll be putting my RA on it right away since she put that question in there. So we'll be solving it. Thanks, everyone. It's been great.
Well, we're at the end of our day, our Diversity Data Deep Dive 3. Thank you so much for staying. I just wanted to thank everyone. First thing, I wanted to thank our sponsors, the School of Nursing, the School of Public Health, School of Dentistry, and of course the Office for Equity and Diversity, and our many, many volunteers. They're all listed in the program. If you can please acknowledge them personally too when you see them. Thank you so much for making this important. I think the three things that were important to today's event was including the system. For the first time, I think we've heard from across the system, and we have some sense now when we talk about what we mean as being part of the system. And I hope that that's just the beginning. I hope there's many collaborations across our system around diversity and data that we keep fostering. Certainly from our offices, but also as a group here collectively. The second thing was this idea about innovation. We talked about that in the second panel. There are so many possibilities and very innovative efforts going on. Sometimes they're focused on diversity, other times they're not, but can we leverage all of that in service of advancing equity, diversity, inclusion? That's another question we wanted to ask. Also interactivity. I know some of you engaged in the Dear Data session, but who knew that our third panel would be another interactive session around data. So I think just engaging with these processes and models. And so with that, we have tentatively scheduled April 17th as the DDDD4, so our fourth session. And it remains to be seen. So we will be sending out a survey early next week. And so please give us your honest feedback about today's event, what you liked, what you did not like, what you would like to see more of, and even if you have specific ideas for the next Diversity Data Deep Dive. I wanted to say a special thanks to the assessment committee. And is anybody here? Please stand. Teddy, Potter, Emily, thank you so much. Alyssa, back in the end. So with that, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening. And please come back for the next time. Thanks.